The fire lit up the night sky, a raging inferno, consuming everything in its path. Sparks flew like embers of a broken world, the heat so intense it felt like the earth itself was burning. In the center of it all stood Maximus, frozen, staring at the flames that were swallowing his perfect life whole. He never meant for it to go this far, never thought a single mistake would unravel everything. But here he was, watching the fire spread, the sirens screaming in the distance, knowing one brutal truth. There's no coming back from this. The golden boy had just turned to ash. Maximus had always been the kind of person others admired from a distance. A towering figure on the football pitch, he commanded attention with every game. His movements, a perfect blend of power and finesse. He was the star player, the one whose name was whispered in awe by both teammates and rivals. Off the pitch, he was just as charismatic, effortlessly charming everyone he encountered with his confidence and easy smile. Teachers called him a role model. Parents adored him. He was the perfect son, the perfect student, the perfect athlete. But beneath this flawless exterior, Maximus harbored a growing restlessness. He felt suffocated by the expectations that others placed upon him. He had always been the one to set the bar high, never faltering, never making mistakes. Yet, with every compliment, with every accolade, the pressure grew heavier. What if he didn't want to be the golden boy anymore? What if he wanted to be something else? Someone else, if only for one night. As he lay in bed one evening, staring at the ceiling, he thought about the possibilities. Maybe it was time for him to break free, to experience life outside the gilded cage he had created. No more being perfect. No more being the guy everyone relied on. Tonight, he would give in to the feeling. It was a Friday night, and as usual, Maximus had football practice to attend. His parents, ever supportive, had already prepared dinner and were waiting for him at home. He had every intention of going, at least that's what he told them. He even packed his gym bag to make it look real. His parents didn't question him. They never did. "I'm off to practice," Maximus said casually, throwing his bag over his shoulder. His mother didn't even look up from the kitchen counter, and his dad was absorbed in the newspaper. Maximus smiled to himself as he stepped out the door. This was it. He was finally breaking free. Instead of heading to the football field, he turned the corner, making his way to the old car park behind the industrial estate. It was a place his friends had used for their little after-hours rebellions, a forgotten corner of the town, far from the watchful eyes of adults. When he arrived, his friends were already waiting. Jake, his closest buddy, grinned at him as he approached. "Got everything?" Jake asked, his voice buzzing with excitement. Maximus grinned back, his pulse quickening. He pulled a small cardboard box from his backpack. Inside, dozens of fireworks gleamed in the dim light. They had pooled their money together for the night's mischief, and now it was time to let loose. The night unfolded in an explosion of color and sound. Fireworks shot into the air, filling the dark sky with their vibrant hues. Maximus felt the rush of freedom, the thrill of doing something reckless without anyone to answer to. The tension he had carried for so long melted away with each burst of light. For a while, everything felt perfect. There were no expectations, no coaches, no teachers, no parents. There was only the raw, unfiltered joy of being young and alive. But as the fireworks lit up the sky, Maximus couldn't shake the feeling that something was about to go terribly wrong. It wasn't just the usual anxiety. This time, it was different. There was something in the air, something that made his skin crawl. And then, the misfire happened. One firework, aimed too hastily, shot off sideways instead of upwards. It flew erratically, striking the side of an old wooden garage. Maximus's eyes widened as the firework exploded on impact. sending sparks flying. The flames ignited immediately. Maximus's heart dropped into his stomach. The fire spread quickly. The garage caught in an inferno of bright, scorching flames. "Run!" someone shouted, but Maximus didn't move. He stood frozen, staring at the fire as it grew higher and higher, consuming everything in its path. The heat radiated toward him, but he couldn't look away. His mind raced with 1,000 thoughts, but one thought stood out above the rest. "This is my fault." The sound of sirens grew louder, and Maximus knew that everything had just changed. The fire crackled and roared, a monstrous beast devouring the garage. Maximus's heart beat in his ears, and his mind was a blur of guilt and fear. He knew he had messed up. The reality of the situation hit him like a wave, each second bringing more panic. The group of friends scattered, each person running in a different direction. But Maximus couldn't move. His body was frozen in place, a sense of dread weighing him down. What had started as a moment of fun, a night of reckless joy, had quickly spiraled into a disaster. "Maximus," Savannah's voice broke through his thoughts. He turned to see her standing at the edge of the car park, her face a mask of shock and anger. "What the hell have you done?" Maximus couldn't answer. His throat was dry, his mind too fogged with guilt to form a coherent sentence. Savannah stormed toward him, her eyes burning with fury. You promised you wouldn't get into trouble," she snapped, her voice trembling with disbelief. "And now look at this! You could have killed someone! What if someone was in that garage? What if the fire spreads to other buildings?" Maximus could feel the weight of her words pressing down on him. The words, "what if?" echoed in his mind like a thunderclap, making the situation feel even more dire. He had lied. He had been reckless. And now, the consequences were beyond anything he could have imagined. Savannah didn't wait for a response. She turned and ran, disappearing into the night. Maximus was left standing alone, staring at the growing inferno, feeling the weight of his actions settle over him like a thick fog. The sirens were now deafening, and the flashing red lights illuminated the car park like a nightmare come to life. This was it. His perfect world was burning down. The fire department arrived and quickly worked to contain the blaze, but the damage had already been done. The garage was nothing but a shell of charred wood, the flames now reduced to smoldering embers. The group of friends had scattered, each of them trying to avoid being caught, but the damage was too great to hide. Maximus stood at the edge of the crowd, his stomach in knots. His parents were arriving, their car pulling up to the scene. He could see his mother's face through the crowd, her expression stricken with confusion and fear. His father stood beside her, his jaw tight with anger. Maximus knew what was coming. The moment his parents saw him, their faces fell. His mother's eyes filled with tears, and his father's expression hardened into something Maximus had never seen before. Disappointment. It hit harder than any punishment could ever have. "You lied to us, Maximus," his father said, his voice quiet but cutting. "You said you were at practice. You told us you were doing the right thing. And now look at this." Maximus felt a sharp sting in his chest. His father's words were like daggers, and for the first time in his life, he realized he had lost something that could never be regained: his parents' trust. Maximus spent the next few days in a haze of guilt and shame. His parents didn't speak to him except when absolutely necessary. They were too angry, too disappointed to even look at him. His suspension from the football team was the least of his worries. The town was talking. The news about the fire spread like wildfire, and Maximus's reputation as the golden boy was shattered. The whispers followed him wherever he went. People who had once praised him now looked at him with scorn. And through it all, Savannah remained distant. too angry to speak to him. Maximus began working through the damage. He helped clean up the wreckage, doing community service for his role in the fire. But it felt like a hollow gesture. Nothing he did could undo what had happened. He had lost everything: his place on the football team, his parents' trust, and his own sense of self. Maximus realized that he wasn't just seeking redemption from his parents or his friends. He was seeking it from himself. The realization hit him like a bolt of lightning. His perfect life had been a lie. And now, it was time to rebuild. Not just for the world around him, but for himself. He began apologizing to everyone he had hurt: the teachers, his coaches, his teammates. He spoke to his parents, trying to rebuild their relationship, though every word felt like a challenge. But it was Savannah who truly made him realize the depth of his mistake. One evening, after a long day of cleanup, Savannah found him sitting alone in the playing field. The night was still, the stars overhead seeming distant and indifferent. "You messed up, Maximus," Savannah said quietly, her voice firm but not unkind. "But that doesn't mean you can't fix it. It's going to take time, but you're not the guy who made that mistake. You can be better than this." Maximus looked up at her, his eyes filled with guilt. "I don't know if I can ever make it right." "You can," Savannah replied, her tone unwavering. "But you have to prove it. You have to show the world and yourself that you've learned from this." Maximus's life was a series of fractured pieces now, like a puzzle that had been shattered and tossed aside. Every morning, he woke up, staring at the same walls that once felt comforting, but now felt suffocating. The weight of his own failure pressed down on him. Every glance, every word, every look from the people in his community reminded him of the night everything had gone wrong. He had spent weeks working to pay off the damage, and while some days felt like progress, most of them felt like trudging through quicksand. The bruises to his reputation weren't something that could be wiped away with a few hours of hard work. Football, the sport that had defined him for years, felt like an impossibility. Without the game, Maximus felt like he was floundering in a sea of self-doubt. His suspension from the team wasn't just a punishment. It was a reflection of everything he had lost. The cheers from the crowd, the high fives from teammates, the pride of his father. It all seemed so distant now. Even though Savannah was still by his side, the gap between them had grown. Her disappointment in him still lingered, hanging in the air between them like a thick fog. It wasn't anger that kept her at arm's length. It was the quiet realization that Maximus had broken something they couldn't just fix with a quick apology. "You don't get it, Max," Savannah said one night as they sat at their old hangout spot, a quiet park bench by the football field, the stadium dark and empty. "You're not just trying to fix a fire. You're trying to fix you, and that's a hell of a lot harder." Maximus stared at the ground, guilt swirling in his stomach. "I don't know where to start. I don't even know if I can fix it." Savannah's voice softened, but there was a hard edge to it. The kind of edge that came with knowing someone could only move forward if they stopped running from their mistakes. "You have to stop punishing yourself, Max. If you want to make this right, you have to start by forgiving yourself first. Then, maybe, the rest of the world will follow." But forgiveness was harder than she realized. Every time Maximus tried to make amends, it felt like he was met with resistance. Teachers, parents, coaches, they all demanded things of him he couldn't give right away. They wanted the old Maximus, the flawless one, back. But he couldn't be that guy anymore. He wasn't sure if he ever could be. The news came like a punch to the gut. The biggest game of the season was approaching. His football team was heading into the finals, and there was one spot left on lineup. His coach had made it clear, Maximus needed to earn his place back on the team. This wasn't just about football, it was about redemption. If Maximus wanted to prove he was more than the reckless kid who had ruined everything, this was his chance to show it. But with his reputation still in tatters and his own doubt clouding his thoughts, Maximus wasn't sure he could even lace up his boots without falling apart. Every practice was torture. His body, out of sync from the suspension, struggled to keep up with the pace of the game. His teammates didn't know how to treat him. Some avoided eye contact. Others barely spoke to him. It was as though they were all waiting for him to make another mistake. But the hardest blow came when his father, who had always been his greatest supporter, pulled him aside after practice. "You're doing well, son," his father said, but his voice held a chill. "But I'm not sure you're ready. Maybe it's better if you stay out of the game." Maximus's chest tightened. "Dad, I need this. I need to show everyone I'm still the guy they believed in." "You're not that guy anymore," his father replied, his eyes cold and distant. "And maybe that's a good thing. Maybe it's time you figured out who you really are." Maximus's heart sank. In that moment, he realized that nothing would ever be the same again. The idea of being the golden boy had already been shattered. But without it, who was he? And more importantly, would his father ever look at him the same way? The day of the final game arrived, and the atmosphere was electric. The entire town had turned out, and the stadium was packed with excited fans. But Maximus felt like a ghost, hovering on the edges of the crowd. He hadn't earned back his place on the team. Not yet. He was still sitting on the sidelines, the weight of his failure pressing on his shoulders. As the game unfolded, Maximus watched his teammates struggle. They were good, but they were missing something he had once brought to the field. A leader, a fire. With every play, he could feel the energy in the stadium building, and the doubt inside him started to boil over. What if I can't do this? What if I'm never going to be enough? Then, something snapped. The thought of never being enough, the realization that he might fail not just the team but himself, tore through him. His fingers itched with the need to prove something, not just to the world, but to himself. Maximus stood up, his body moving on autopilot. He jogged to the sideline, making eye contact with his coach. The coach's face was a mixture of confusion and disbelief, but he said nothing as Maximus grabbed his shirt. "You're not ready," his coach said, his voice low and strained. "I don't need to be ready," Maximus replied, his voice steady despite the storm inside. "I just need a chance." It was a gamble, a last-ditch effort to save everything he had worked for. But it was also a chance to reclaim himself. The coach hesitated for a moment, then nodded. "Get in there." Maximus stepped onto the pitch, his boots digging into the turf as he positioned himself. The game was close, tension thick in the air, and his teammates looked at him like he was a stranger. With the clock ticking down, it all came down to one final moment. Maximus was a striker now, his mind clear, his body moving with purpose. He could hear the crowd cheering, but it was distant, like an echo. His world had narrowed to the pitch, the only place where he could find redemption. The ball snapped, and Maximus moved like a man possessed. He dodged a tackle, kicked the ball with precision, and watched as it flew through the air. Jake intercepted it, scoring a goal in a stunning play that secured the win. The stadium erupted. The roar of the crowd was deafening, and for a moment, Maximus stood still. His heart raced, but there was no longer any fear. There was only the pure thrill of the moment. When the game ended and the cheers continued to echo around him, Maximus looked up into the stands. His parents were there, his mother with tears in her eyes, his father nodding in silent approval. They didn't say anything, but their presence, their quiet acknowledgement, spoke volumes. Maximus had done it. He had not only won the game, he had won back his place in the world. And as he stood on the field, he realized that the greatest victory wasn't the trophy or the applause. It was the journey. He had fallen, he had broken, but he had risen again. Not as the perfect golden boy, but as someone far stronger. Someone who had learned the true meaning of redemption. The fire that had once consumed everything he cared about had burned away the old Maximus, but from its ashes had emerged someone new. A man who understood that the most important victories were the ones fought inside.